So today I want to introduce you to our first speaker, Sean Condren. So I've watched Sean develop his career over the last 10 years. He's worked at 4 listed SaaS companies, including the likes of Concur, Seamless, and most recently, City Pantry. This is an individual that is generated in his last role over £4 million worth of closed business. 50% of that came from outbound. So he is meticulous with how he is actually running a process. Right now, though, guys, we're suffering. Targets have dropped, but commission's down. It's not fun. And I do want to acknowledge that. It is not fun for many of us out there. And, you know, heartfelt thoughts go out to any of you whose family and friends have been impacted. We've had people in our company impacted, and it is quite difficult. But we can only control what we can control. And Sean, if I can invite you in now, is going to be talking about how you can support the prospecting process and have patience. He's got a number of frameworks he's going to walk you through. Listen carefully, take notes. This is all recorded. So if you have to jump off to the toilet or you have to call your girlfriend or your boyfriend, that's fine. We will record this, and we will also do a summary, a full written summary that you will be able to read. Just one final shout out. As many of you will know, we've launched the world's very first sales learning and development membership. We actually have a SaaS platform. Woo woo! So you can actually subscribe to Sales Confidence, the membership platform, and you get daily dosage from the top leaders in the UK, and you're going to hear from more legends like Sean Condren. Good to see you, Adam. Great to see you, Shane. Let's get Sean Condren up.
Thanks, James. Great. And thanks to the Sales Confidence team as well for the invite. I've been following the company for a couple of years, so nice little privilege to get invited on. So firstly, I'm just going to acknowledge that I appreciate the title of this talk is probably not something that people necessarily want to hear, because it's essentially take a step back in some respects. What I actually mean by be patient is really be led by the prospect rather than pushing them constantly. So I'm not saying don't try and win now. What I'm hoping people can take from this is a way to build in some extra credibility so that you do sell what you can now, or at least as a second best, you're ingratiating people so that you are in their mind when the time is right, which will hopefully pave the way for your future opportunities. I think that's really important because at least what I'm seeing right now is a slight shift from where we were a couple of months ago, where we were just being told, no, we're not doing anything, to, well, now this is going to be the norm for a longer period of time. How do we actually start to operate with people working from home as the new norm? So there's 2 things to consider. So one is for prospecting and one is for progressing sales. And they both hinge on evaluating what I call your you versus I focus. So for prospecting, not sure if people were on the event last week, but Sales Confidence ran a leaders event. One of the speakers made a great comment, which was the hardest part of closing a deal is finding it. And the more I thought about that after, the more it resonated with me, particularly in the current situation, because one of the things I think you can do to win more right now comes down in part to what you're actually doing at the top of the funnel. So it's about really, as James kind of mentioned, like meticulously evaluating who you're contacting and really why. So an interesting thing I always get sales reps to do is to ask yourself how you versus I focused is my approach. One of the ways that you can do that is going back and looking at prospecting or outreach emails that you send and tallying up the number of times you use the words I, we, or your company versus you, yours, or your company. By doing that, you get a bit of an idea of the balance or potentially imbalance of the language that you're using being focused on them or you. So if your written language is more I-focused rather than focused on the prospect, the question you have to ask yourself is, are you really contacting that company or person for a valid reason? And 2, there's also a pretty good chance that your spoken language when selling is more focused on who you are and what you do rather than the prospect's needs and the value that business or the business is derived from your solution. So for me, the language you use really needs to be derived from the actual language of your intended prospect or current clients. There's a couple of simple ways to do that. So one is, if you are doing deals right now, is about getting the actual client story in their own words of why they're using you and building that language into your prospecting efforts. And two, if you're going after new prospects, it's doing ideally like intelligent things in terms of, say, looking at job adverts or JDs for the type of contact you want to sell to give you an idea of what's important to them, so you can tweak your message for those people or that role. So this is very specific within a process, but I'm making the assumption that most companies have SDRs, or you're responsible for your own outbound prospecting, because you're probably not getting a lot of marketing leads right now. So this needs to be plugged into a systematic process where you're consistently building lists of companies that are a good fit, adding contacts, and then putting them through a sequence of emails and or calls. And obviously, as James mentioned, there's tools that you can use to evaluate that, and you can use also things like Aircall to actually evaluate your spoken language too. Where I think that makes a difference is that by focusing on the quality of what you're putting into that process, you're going to improve the number of good fit companies, because you're going to take stuff out that's not a good fit. And while you may then actually approach potentially less companies, you're more likely to have a better conversion rate. If you're improving your messaging, you're leading that you're leading with, it means you're more likely to get more responses, have more conversations, and generate more ops. And then by focusing on the selling language that you're using, it means you're more likely to increase positive outcomes from calls, and either sign people now, or, as I mentioned, is ingratiate those people towards you, so that you're more likely to be in their mind as a result of credibility if or when they do decide to do something. And the worst case scenario is that you'll just learn very quickly why things aren't working, if that's actually being done as part of a systematic outbound approach. So you'll get in and get out very quickly. Second thing to consider is about progression of opportunities. And at every stage in your cycle, just looking at how you versus I focused your approach is. So very simple one with demos is, do you lead with a like 10 slide deck about who you are, or does your conversation start with what's important to the prospect? The second bit then is about sequence of events, and this is going beyond just knowing what the next step is, but actually understanding all the steps involved in order to come to a decision, who needs to be involved, and getting dates assigned against those steps. The question you need to ask yourself when you're doing that is do I have a sequence of events, and really importantly, who is actually driving it? If you don't have that set of steps, although you may think you know where you are in a sales cycle, that might not actually match up with where the prospect thinks they are. And you're just going to come across as pushy, because you're going to be going back to them without a valid reason for needing to. So the best indication for me that you're on the right path is that the prospect is actually giving you the sequence of events without being asked, because it's clear they're thinking about how to get a deal done. If they don't, then obviously you need to ask them, but you again need to be honest with yourself about, are they driving it or are you driving it? And I think one of the really simple kind of litmus tests for that is an analogy from men are from Mars, women are from Venus, which is about relationships being like an elastic band. So in a relationship, like people are sometimes pulling in different directions. If you're the person who's always doing the pulling, potentially the band will snap. So at some point in your sales cycle, you have to actually do the counterintuitive thing and stop and stand still and see whether the prospect goes past and actually starts to pull you along. And I think one of the ways that you can actually do that within a sales cycle, for me, I think an important thing for you to do is look at the risks in your opportunity. One of the ways that we get our salespeople to do that is to actually use what they think is a risk to say to the prospect, this is what essentially we think that may be a reason for you not to sign at this particular time. And in that way, what you're doing is actually making it much easier for the prospect to say no, or basically agree with you, rather than you pushing them to try and move along and then having to tell you no. So you're making it easy for people to say yes. Just going back, appreciate I have a little bit more time, is so when you're using or looking at your kind of messaging, I think one of the examples from like B2B food ordering is algorithmic trading companies. So we have a process where we kind of put messages out to people that follows a pretty standard format, but we tweak it per industry and per contact type. Within algorithmic trading companies, they provide food to their traders every single day during lunch. The reason they do that is because traders have to be on at their terminals throughout the day in order to execute trades. Now, as a marketing message, provide food to your staff to keep them locked to their desk is not really an attractive marketing message. But when we turn up to prospects and we have that in our kind of our talk track, it demonstrates that we actually know how their business makes money and why they use food as a way to kind of offer a perk to staff. So yeah, I think those for me are kind of two ways right now that you can actually like look to build in more credibility to what you're doing, which hopefully helps you to build a better quality list for the people that you're performing outreach to, giving you obviously like valid reasons for actually contacting people, having better conversations, and giving yourself a much better chance of pushing people through sales cycles successfully. Those really are the kind of key bits that I think were kind of top of mind for us. I think one of the things James had mentioned, or kind of asked us when we had our rehearsal earlier in the week, was how we were dealing with salespeople that aren't hitting target right now. And I think where the kind of patience thing came from is really, you know, the conversation we've had to have with people is that like it is very difficult right now. We have adjusted some of the barometer that we have in terms of what we expect. And we are just kind of looking for people to do obviously as much activity as we can get out of them, but right now we know that it's difficult to be doing deals. So we're basically just asking people to obviously do what they can, but the expectation from a salesperson's perspective has got to really be that you're not going to be earning as much commission as you may have expected to be in normal times. And right now, the worst scenario is that you could be furloughed. Even worse than that, you could actually be out of a job. So for me, it's about just obviously having some patience, knowing that everyone is in a difficult situation, and just trying to obviously get what you can. But really just trying to ingratiate people so that you're paving the way for your future sales.
Thank you, Sean. Great final point there. I think, look, I think we are, if you're in SaaS, you're in a privilege. If you're in SaaS and you still have a job, I think, we should be grateful for that. And we have to be realistic. There were some phenomenal shares in that, Sean. Round of applause. Thank you for kicking off today's event. If you can zip off, and I'm going to bring in Alex, and we'll bring you back for questions at the end.